Okay, Julian, big picture. How do you view Bryce Young in the context of being the franchise quarterback now that he's played 4 games? And do you factor in the context of how well C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson have looked so far?
Well, you have to. He's always going to be linked to the other guys that were drafted in the first round of the 2023 NFL draft. So people are always going to look at C.J. Stroud, especially knowing on March 10th when the Carolina Panthers decided to move up to number 1 overall, there was some thought of, okay, that was for C.J. Stroud. Now, they come back later on and say it was always Bryce Young. But was it always Bryce Young? Was there a little bit more convincing for Frank Reich, who the book was out on him that's saying that he only liked the work of a certain height of a quarterback, a certain physical frame. He says that's not what I am at all. And he said the great things about Bryce Young, but you're always going to look at what C.J. Stroud has done. You're always going to look at Anthony Richardson, who actually, concussion, now has a sprained AC joint in the shoulder. He's probably the most physically dominant of the guys.
Yeah,
and
when he's healthy, he looks really good.
But he's the one who's been dealing with injuries, where Bryce had that mysterious ankle injury that kept him out of week 3. So, of course, you got to look at that. Right now, I just think it's too early to really tell. I know Stroud went out and almost won the game down in Atlanta today. He's looked good. But still, you look at the offensive line. You couldn't have predicted the injuries to Brady Christensen. Austin Corbett's not come back yet. You couldn't predict that Chandler Zavala, who really hasn't played well. Hopefully he's going to be fine. I know he traveled back with the team after being carted off with neck injury. You couldn't really predict him really struggling like he has, and Ike Ekwonu, the way he's performed. The outside receivers, they just have not been good enough for the Panthers, and the scheme has also left a lot to be desired. So there's just so many things around Bryce Young that are not great, to where it's just difficult for me to really look at him and be like, he's not the guy.
Julian, clearly they're the worst team in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the record says it. Our eyes see it.
Yeah.
They won't get the number 1 pick in the draft, even if they have the worst record at the end of the year. What can be salvaged from this season with however 12 games to go?
It's difficult. It was a week ago, right before kickoff against Minnesota. You saw the report from Ian Rappaport saying the Carolina Panthers were still all in on winning this year, that they wanted to acquire a wide receiver 1. I'm not quite sure how they believe they're going to be able to do that. I don't know what team in the NFL is going to be like, hey, here's our top receiver, Carolina. How about you go ahead and take him and then help you win games the rest of the way? Just really nonsensical. This is an issue the team should have been able to identify months ago, but they decided not to do that. Nuke Hopkins had over 100 yards of receiving today, by the way, in Tennessee, someone the Panthers weren't interested in. So I don't really know what you can make of the season aside from development of Bryce Young. I felt like coming into the year, as we did our buy or sell segment, I talked about really what mattered most was how did Bryce Young develop this year? Making sure that he looks like he could be the guy for the long term. So now that they're 0-5, going to be 0-6 next week, not quite sure when they're going to a football game. The only thing that really matters is Bryce Young's development, and it would be nice if there was more around him. I think Austin Corbett coming back on the offensive line will help as far as the run game and getting some balance offensively and protecting him up the middle. So that really is what you're watching for if you're a Carolina Panthers fan, the hope for a better future, that better future having Bryce Young as your franchise quarterback.
And Panthers fans who were watching on Sunday, and when Bryce Young started to actually have some success through the air, everybody's saying, and the creative run calls, everybody's saying, okay, Thomas Brown's calling the game now. Frank Reich said after the game, no, he was still the play caller. You know, are you on board with this thing going to Thomas Brown now? Is it time to do that? How much will it help the offense, do you think, in reality?
Personally, I don't think it's going to do anything at all. Your receivers still are slow, not dynamic, can't separate. Your offensive line's banged up. Yes, Corbett comes back. That helps. Miles Sanders has not looked good at all. I question whether he's even healthy. He's been on the injury report the last 2 weeks of a groin, the same injury that cost him the preseason, so I have my concerns there. Chu Hubbard's looked better. I liked some of the things that they did with Laviska Shenault. And you talk about the run calls, like that was the third drive of the game where they got that touchdown to get it to 14-7. I would think that early on in the game when you're still things in the balance, that would have been Frank Reich calling the plays. But Frank Reich has continued to say that's a collaborative effort. Yeah, sure, have Thomas Brown call plays. I don't think it's going to change the real issues that Carolina has, which is an offensive line that has struggled with injuries, that really has not played as well from some of the guys that you expected to be good players for you. The receivers just don't have the talent to be a good enough receiver unit to really help Bryce Young moving forward, outside of Adam Thielen, who has been really good for the Panthers, everything that I hope that he would be. So I do think, though, I'll say this. They go 0-5, which they are right now. They lose next week, they're 0-6, going into the bye week. Something has to change.
Yeah.
The most logical thing to change would be I guess changing play callers, having Frank Reich focus on all areas of the team, which he probably was already doing anyways. But to appease people, primarily the owner, I'm thinking, then yes, let Thomas Brown call the plays and then see how the offense will still not be any good. And then we can find out who will be the next scapegoat and who Panther fans want to be upset about. So, yeah, sure, have Thomas Brown call plays. That would probably make a little bit of sense. If you're 0-6, why not give him a try? But it won't change anything. This thing is broken beyond repair for this season, and the only thing can be fixed is in the offseason by getting better players.
All right, let's keep the conversation with this all-star coaching staff led by Frank Reich. At 0-5, it isn't working.
No.
When are you at the point where you can say it's not going to work?
Yeah, that's a good question. 0-6, likely to happen before going into the bye week. Houston, winnable game. Indianapolis, winnable game. Chicago, winnable game. But would you count on this team winning any of those games? Unlikely. That would be the case that you would think they'd win. I feel like they'll probably get a win then. But if you get to December, and this is a 1-2 win football team, I just don't know how you can justify bringing them back as an experienced head coach. Frank Reich had a winning record in Indianapolis when they decided to fire him. He never had the consistency at quarterback. But he's an experienced head coach. And you look at what DeMeco Ryans, who David Tepper wasn't really interested in, and Ryans didn't want to come here so that Tepper could check that Rooney Rule box. He decided, I'm good, I'm not going to interview. He's doing a pretty good job in Houston. They're at least competitive. They might be 2-3, but they look better coached than this team. Shane Steichen, someone who David Tepper apparently was interested in. His team in Indianapolis has also looked better coached than this team. You look at Jonathan Gannon and the Arizona Cardinals. They have looked better coached than this Carolina Panthers football team. So there's really no excuse for the amount of experience from this coaching staff, especially from Frank Reich as the head coach, for this offense to look this way, for this team to be as undisciplined, the procedural penalties, the way that they've looked overall. Unacceptable. So if that's going to be the case for an experienced head coach and they're going to be a 2-3-1 football team, if I'm David Tepper, I would have hired Steve Wilkes in the first place. But if I'm David Tepper, then yeah, I'm going to be wondering, do I bring this guy back? Because this is unacceptable on every level for a coaching staff with this much experience to have a football team that looks like this week in and week out, that continues to beat itself and make the same mistakes. All
right, that's why you keep it locked in with Julian Council from Locked On Panthers after every game and every day of the week, win or lose.